Fox, jumper over Looney, swish. 21-point half for De'Aaron Fox.
Now, back to Steiny and Guru on 95.7 The Game.
All right, Matt Stein, Matt Darrell, the Guru Johnson with you. And let's bring on our main man, John Dickinson. He's been at all 4 games. He's our 95.7 The Game reporter. And obviously, we'll talk about last night's game, but I think we got to start with the news, which is De'Aaron Fox fractured index finger on his shooting hand, and he's listed as doubtful for Wednesday. Anything else or anything more you can bring to the table, JD?
Well, first of all, it just sucks.
Yes.
You just want these teams to be healthy and battle it out, and the series has been so terrific, and it's one of those series where both teams could probably say, hey, we should be up 3-1. Well, you're not, and that's why it's 2-2, and that's why it's been an amazing series to this point. And really, one of the big reasons that I think the nation benefits from the fact, really, that Harrison Barnes missed that shot is because we all know we're going to get 2 more games of what we've had here through the first 4 at least, if not 3. And it's just a bummer if he does have to miss or is significantly impacted by this injury. I will say this, guys, because I did think it was interesting, and how things get reported, I think, is interesting. So here's kind of my big takeaway beyond it sucks. You have Shams Charania, who had the original report, and you guys read it, and it's fracture, expected to be listed as doubtful. He went on to note what Fox had done, basically after sustaining the injury. Shams is a clutch guy. And, he's an exceptional reporter. He's the best or number 2 in the business, but he's also kind of noted as being a clutch guy. So De'Aaron Fox switched to clutch. And so, I wonder if the way Shams is reporting it is in some way to make it out like, hey, Fox is really up against it. Kind of to give a clutch guy, in some ways maybe an excuse or to set up a narrative if he is able to play, and I hope he is able to play, that he'd be maybe doing something heroic. And so, that's a cynical way of looking at it, but it did pop into my mind. And then I saw Woj, who tweeted about it in his reporting about it, and his reporting was different. There's hope he will try to play in Game 5. Sources tell him he would need to have a protective covering and the like. So to me, we got 2.5 days before Game 5. A lot can happen in 2.5 days. He may be doubtful now, but by the time they get to practice tomorrow afternoon, he's questionable because he's feeling better, and it sounds like this is more of a pain tolerance kind of a thing that certainly would hamper him. But I don't know. In some ways, I'm feeling like he's going to be out there, and the Warriors sure as hell should be looking at this thing like he's going to be out there and he's going to be able to be as effective as he's been in this series, which has been just tremendous.
Yeah, JD, that tremendous is 31, 6, and 7. By the way, if I can give you 2 steals, he's been phenomenal. So I don't know why. I got the news. I panicked because of, all these other stars out, but I'm thinking, you know what? Not comparing them to the late, great Kobe Bryant, but I'm like, maybe he will be out there with something protecting that digit. But you were in the house yesterday, Jay, and I got to ask you, all the years since you've been covering the Warriors, after that timeout and the Fox 3 and Curry going with 10 seconds left on the clock, I still can't get over that. But yet the Warriors won. But, Jay, can you walk us through what went through your mind as the Kings had that ball with the chance to kind of pull off one of the most, stunners since Steve Kerr's been head coach?
What was going through my mind were all the times I've watched the Kings this season steal a game in the most incredible, I can't believe how they did it way possible. Whether it be Russell Westbrook throwing a ball away when the Clippers had a Game 1. I think the Rockets screwed up 2 straight inbounds passes, and De'Aaron Fox ended up getting fouled and made some free throws. Fox himself hit 2 pull-up 3 game winners from deep. I actually thought that was the shot that I thought he was just going to maybe take a pull-up 3 if he couldn't maybe get by the initial defender when he brought the ball up the court. Great job by Steph, I thought, and Draymond, although he did leave himself vulnerable with the pass to Barnes, but the Warriors did it right in not allowing Fox be the guy to take the shot, because Fox has made those shots as much or more than any player in the NBA this season. And so it would have been an absolute catastrophe. And I heard you guys talking about momentum, and I agree 95% of the time momentum is nothing in a series. But if the Kings had won that game the way they would have won it, if Barnes hits the three, and the way the Warriors would have lost it with Curry taking the timeout and what would have been the 5-point lead and the ball with 45 seconds to go, that would have been the end of the series. I mean, that you're not overcoming that. I don't care who you are. And so the momentum would have been, that's one small area where I do think momentum does matter, because it would have been the difference between 3-1 and 2-2, where I think both teams, Fox injury aside, I think both teams have to really like where they're at going into Game 5. Now, the Fox thing is a huge gut punch for Sacramento. We'll see how effective or if he's unable to play. But I think the Kings coming off of Game 4, and this has been a little under-talked about maybe, but they finally played their game against the Warriors in Game 4. And I think the thing they could hang their hat on moving forward is the fact that they were able to get the pace going and get to their 125 type of a game. And the Warriors had some tremendous shot making to stay with them. But I think the Kings would almost look at Game 4 and say, if we can keep the pressure on the Warriors in the same way and keep the game like those regular season games for the duration here, two of these last three, that they'd love their chances regardless of where the game's being played, because they showed to themselves they could finally play their game in the Warriors building. So I know the Warriors surviving and everything they had to do to survive was impressive, and that gives the Warriors a chance, obviously, to win the series now that it's 2-2, only having to get one for now in Sacramento. But I think the Kings, Fox injury aside now, came out of Game 4 probably feeling like their confidence had increased in this series.
John Dickinson joining us on 95.7 The Game. JD, and I'm just going to throw this out there as a conversation starter, and this is because I was a beat writer covering a team for 10, 15 years. I look at that game like a storyteller, and you start thinking about the ramifications that game or that shot could have had. And it really is staggering in a way. You have Harrison Barnes, who, I don't know if he's persona non grata here, but there are a lot of fans that aren't big Barnes fans after the 16 finals, etc. You have a guy that a lot of fans here disrespect. He makes that shot. You could make, and depending on what happens after, the dynasty's over. I mean, you could make a case that Harrison Barnes could have ended the dynasty, but that's still only half the story. The other half of the story would have been Curry being Chris Webber and then taking a bad, he made two awful decisions. Did that cross your mind at all?
Yeah. I mean, it crossed my mind.
The one little, this game, everything could have, forget 3-1 versus 2-2. It's almost like it could have been the start of the end.
Well, I think it would have been the end of the end.
Might have.
I mean, for it to happen that way, there's no doubt. And for Harrison Barnes to be the guy that never made the big shot in a lot of Warrior fans' eyes,
exactly,
to be the guy that made the big shot, I mean, that would have been the ultimate. To have Curry, the player who never makes the big mistake, make the big mistake and undeniably make the big mistake. There's nothing that, and sure, it was on Kerr and all that too, but Curry's still the one that called the timeout. Curry would have to wear that for the rest of his career in the big moment when you've basically just won a game. So, no, I definitely think that it would have been a major story and a staggering one. And, for all the things where the Warriors have had some good fortune over the years. And look, they still got the stop. I mean, they forced Fox to pass the ball, and they took their chances with Harrison Barnes. I'll take my chances with Harrison Barnes taking that shot than De'Aaron Fox doing anything in the clutch with the year that he's had that I laid out a little bit earlier here. So the Warriors played it right. Sometimes you play the percentages and get beat. Sometimes you don't. I think the Warriors played it right, but there's no doubt. I mean, this whole series to me has kind of felt like that with the Draymond suspension, and could that lead to them going down 0-3 and then being done, and then the end of Draymond or the end of the dynasty in that way? I still think all of those different things are on the table here, but the process may have been sped up. I mean, I still think, guys, and this is even with the Fox news, because I got a feeling he's going to end up playing, and it could be one of those things where maybe it's just a pain tolerance issue, and it gets better for Game 6 than Game 5 and better for Game 7 than Game 6. So we'll have to see how it shakes out. But I still think every single scenario is on the table for this series. Warriors in 6. I think Kings in 6 is still on the table. I think Warriors in 7 is on the table. I think Kings in 7 is on the table. All possible outcomes to me are still right there for this series.
Jay, talk to me about, first let me take you back to Friday's show. Steiny brought up the possibility of Dre, who was coming off suspension, going to the coaches and saying, you know what, I saw what you guys were doing. Let's do one big. I'll come off the bench. And Jay, I chuckled and laughed. And I know what Dre means and stands for, but I just thought, the wrong reasons about ego, he wouldn't go for that. And he did. And he talked about it after the game. But the game, that was the best 3 for 14 I've seen. He was clutch, guarded Fox. I'm not saying stopped or shut Fox down, but Jay, speak to what you saw from Draymond, who I've since apologized and let Steiny take his victory lap. He was phenomenal to me yesterday.
Made life difficult on Fox down the stretch, made life difficult on Sabonis at times as well. And it didn't surprise me that it all played out the way that it did. I know Steiny mentioned it on the show Friday before I hopped on with you guys, but if he hadn't mentioned it, I was going to mention it, and definitely echoed what Steiny had alluded to with the fact that it wouldn't surprise me at all if Draymond went in and kind of volunteered, or at least allowed for the door to be open for him to come off the bench, just because it's been so ingrained in the way the Warriors have handled things in the playoffs. They've handled things a lot, if I can use the baseball comparison, to the way the Giants, when they were winning championships, handled things. Nobody was off limits as far as their role or position in the batting order, or Cy Young going to the bullpen, or like all guys pitching out of order. Your ace is coming in as the closer in Game 7. Like, teams that are able to check the egos and the normal roles and just do everything possible to give yourself the best chance to win in those do-or-die pivot points of big series, I think are the teams that get it done. And I think it really is synonymous in some ways with the way that the Giants had done things. And I think the success that the Warriors have had, there's something in it, I think, as far as, not being afraid to do the right thing for the team no matter what it is. And that's a credit to Draymond in this instance. It's a credit to Steve Kerr. It's a credit to Steph, who's done it in the past, and Bogut before that, and all of these different players who've had their roles shifted around to allow the Warriors their best shot to come back in some series where they really have been in a little bit of trouble.
John Dickinson joining us on 95.7 The Game. All right, I'll go with you on that analogy, the Giants and the Warriors. Will you meet me halfway, though, and say a couple exceptions, one on each team? One, Barry Zito. They could never ask him to come out of the bullpen because he had this routine. And so he always had to start. They never brought him out of the bullpen. Similarly, of all the players that have gone to the bench, Klay's the only one who hasn't.
Klay'd have the biggest problem with it. I mean, and I think Klay would have such a big problem with it, they probably wouldn't ask him to do it.
I think so, too.
If there was an injury type deal where he was coming back from an injury in a playoff, I think maybe they would ask at that point, and maybe he'd be more willing to do it. That's probably the only way. I'll say this for Zito, not to get in the baseball conversation, but yeah, the Giants knew they couldn't ask Zito to come out of the bullpen, so they just kept him off the playoff roster entirely. So that was their and until they could put him back in the. Now the next year he just didn't pitch at all until they needed him to make the start in 2012, and then he made the start, as we've talked about, guys, for Bumgarner, ironically enough, who'd been ineffective in that Cardinal series. But as far as Zito, they couldn't use him. Well, if we can't use you out of the pen, well, you're not starting. That means you're off the roster. So they weren't afraid to do that with the guy that they had paid all the money to. But I'm with you on Klay. I think Klay would be the most difficult star or even player probably on the roster to have that conversation about changing a role even in the big moment.
Jay, I got to run this by you. This is why I love sports and what we do. Seriously, man. All season long, at every turn, the Warriors on the road have broken my heart. Steiny, this JD, this is the day. It hadn't happened. I was with you game 2 in Sac. You hooked me up. I'm in there. I'm watching what transpires. A winnable game. Warriors come home down 0-2. Has anything transpired in these 2 games here in the Bay that leads you to believe, you know what, Goo? The Warriors are going to get one of these next 2 in Sac? Because, Jay, if in order for them to advance, they got to get one on the road.
Yeah, I think the Warriors are figuring out who they have to play and how they have to play. You know, steady beats Sacramento. Steady players beat Sacramento. Steady pace beats Sacramento. I think that's where you look at the Warriors' top 6 yesterday just handling their business, really. And I got to give Klay Thompson a big nod because, and I don't think many have spoken about it, and it's too bad. I mean, one thing that does kind of drive me nuts, and I feel like we all have to quit doing this, is like Klay had a really good game. Like, game ends, Warriors win. Klay overall had a really good game. And I feel like people start hunting for who was critical of Klay in game 2. Well, Klay stunk in game 2. So you know what? It's okay to be critical of Klay in game 2. Like, because he had a good game 4 doesn't mean people who were critical of him in game 2 or game 3 were wrong about what they said in game 2. And I feel like we do that all the time now with Klay in particular. It's like when he has a bad game, you can say he's bad. When he has a good game, you can say he was pretty good. I thought Klay yesterday was really good after a bad start. He got off to a bad start yesterday, and I thought, early second quarter, it was kind of, like, if he doesn't start playing better, the Warriors are going to be in major trouble as the Kings are building that 9-point lead. The Warriors were able to hit some shots and get back into that game quickly before it got dicey for them. But I thought Klay in game yesterday made the adjustment and stayed patient and played better defense. I thought his defense was really bad early, and then he stayed steady, and he played pretty good defense for about 2.5 quarters. And that was a subtle difference between winning and losing. So hat tip to Klay, but it's not all or nothing. It's not when he has a good game, then it's like it's all good, and then when he has a bad game, it's all bad. There's going to be good and bad games for him and others in this series. That's how it works.
95.7 The Game breaking news.
All right, JD, I'm glad we have you on the line. The Green Bay Packers and the Jets have agreed to a trade sending Aaron Rodgers to the Jets for major compensation. The deal includes a second-rounder this year, a first-round pick swap this year, and a conditional first-rounder in 2024. That's Adam Schefter. I know Aaron Rodgers is one of your favorite players.
This is great.
He's no longer a Green Bay Packer. You can go with the flow as well as anyone. We just talked about the Giants. What do you think of the trade?
Yeah, I mean, the Jets are going in. They didn't have a quarterback. They're giving up what looks like a hell of a lot of compensation to get him. But, I mean, I know it's official now, and we were waiting when it was going to be, but this was really a story from like 2 months ago, right? Like, this is we all knew. What?
3 months ago. It just feels like the baby's finally here. Damn.
No, and it's the thing that I'm going to go off the beaten path a little bit, and this is not necessarily new, but my first thought now that this thing is official is how eerily similar Aaron Rodgers' career has been to Brett Favre's career, even though, like from the fact that they kind of pushed Favre out the door for Rodgers, and Favre was prickly to Rodgers when they were on the team together, and then Rodgers became kind of this prickly guy as time went on in his career. He won the 1 Super Bowl early with Green Bay. All of the talk was, boy, Favre's going to win 1,000,000 Super Bowls, 4, 5, 6. LeBron only won the 1. Rodgers won the 1 early, only won the 1, and now he winds up on the freaking New York Jets. That's pretty.
And they
pretty
got
incredible.
talent. I ain't got to tell you,
They
JD.
do.
They got talent on both sides. So
Yeah,
I'll say this. Go ahead.
No, just real quick. It's going to be interesting because I think, there's been something off to me about Aaron Rodgers throughout his career that's been more a part of why his teams haven't won it. And I feel like he's always had the convenient excuse of this part of the team wasn't good enough, or that part of the team messed up, or the coach did this. Or I feel like it's never truly ever been his fault, when more of it probably should have gone on him. So I think now that he's no longer with Green Bay, like, we're going to find out. Does he still have weird playoff losses, or now all of a sudden is he going to get over the hump and win himself another Super Bowl?
I got to give you this tidbit. I'll never forget Tom Brady's last pass in the Patriot uniform was a pick six in a playoff game, and I thought physically, JD, he was done. When he went to Tampa Bay and won, I know he's a multiple Super Bowl winner. Aaron Rodgers is not, but physically, I think with that Jet defense and the weaponry he has, like they should be a major player in the AFC.
Yeah, there's just a lot of other quarterbacks too. I mean, that's the only you could make the case in the NFC. The path should have been easier, but now it's all right. You're going up against Mahomes, and you're going up against Burrow, and you're going up against Allen and others. So we'll see how all that shakes out. But yeah, that's a big one. I had a feeling it was going to happen between now and Thursday, obviously with the draft, and we'll see what happens with Trey Lance. Is Trey Lance going to be on the move in the next 72 hours?
Well, John Lynch is on record as saying that the Trey Lance trade, that was all smoke, JD. So there you go. Yeah.
We'll
that was doing that tongue in cheek.
Yeah, all smoke. Yeah, it's always all smoke with the Niners, and then they dropped the bombshell right in the middle of a show one day that he's headed somewhere else. So I'll believe it when I see it. The Niners are great at saying everything's smoke, and then exactly what they said was smoke winds up happening at some point down the line.
All right, JD. Keep in touch.
Hey, Jay, what was your Warrior prediction
for this series?
Yeah.
Warriors in 6.
All right. We still got action.
Yeah. We'll leave. Yep. I still got action.
All right, Jay.
See you guys.
Appreciate it. You know I don't like those looks.